evening's webinar on the topic of happiness. For those of you joining us for the first time, we do a monthly webinar as part of something called the Clubhouse, which is our virtual running club for plus size women. So it's a really informal affair. We have a different topic each month, and this month is happiness. So I'm just going to check who we have in. Yep, we've got a few ladies, few familiar faces, few familiar names and faces. Bettina, Kathy, Tracy, Becky and Joanne, welcome, and hopefully a few more will join us either live or on the catch-up. So as I said, today's webinar is on happiness, and we have the fabulous happiness speaker, Frederica Roberts. So you'd like to say hello?
Hello, what a lovely welcome.
Okay, so what the hell has happiness got to do with running? Well, I think that running makes me happy. But I met Frederica a few months ago at something called the PSA, which is the Professional Speakers Association. And she is a fellow speaker, and we'd never met before, and I'd never heard of her. And somebody said, oh, she's the happiness speaker. And I thought, what's that then? And when I heard her speak a few weeks ago, I was blown away by not only her backstory and what she said, but how much of her tips and advice I sometimes either use or should use more. So so I invited her along to be our guest speaker, and really what I'm going to do is just hand over to her really to give a little bit of an introduction into who she is, and to perhaps start off a few conversations about how happiness can influence your health and well-being. So Frederica, tell us a little bit about how you become the happiness speaker.
Well, I decided that I wanted to share something that people kept asking me about. My background is quite varied. I've spent about 12 years in recruitment, which can be all sorts of things except happy a lot of the time. It's a very pressurized sales environment. I also spent 2 years working as a teacher. But I've got two daughters who are 15 and 17 now, which brings its own challenges in itself. Two lovely, lovely, absolutely bonkers teenagers in the house, but both of them were born with severe heart conditions, and over the years we really have gone through the mill. It started off when Charlie, our eldest, was born, and we were told at birth that she had a series of heart conditions that were quite serious and life-threatening. After a very dramatic emergency cesarean, she was then taken into a different city 30 miles away. So I was stuck in one hospital, my baby was in another, my husband was going between the two. It was really not what we'd kind of imagined our first foray into parenthood would be. She had open heart surgery when she was nearly 5 years old, just before she started school, and that came with quite a few complications as well. And then on the whole, actually, she's been leading a very normal life, and she's been absolutely fine. But we always know that she's got this condition, and she's on medication, etc. And then when she was 12, one morning, she just didn't wake up. Mother's worst nightmare. I went into her room to wake her up, and she just wasn't responding. She was blue, she was clammy, cold, and she'd had a cardiac arrest. I will cut the very long story short. We were extraordinarily lucky because she actually survived. I mean, we were really lucky every step of the way that it happened just as she was due to get up in the morning, so that we actually realised that the ambulance was parked just around the corner, so they were here very, very quickly, and she got absolutely first-class care, and after quite a traumatic few weeks, we actually got her back, and life resumed almost back as normal. She's now got a defibrillator fitted, but on the whole, we went back to normal. Now, our second daughter, Hannah, was actually diagnosed with an even more serious heart condition when I was pregnant, and with her at the 20-week scan, we were actually told that it might be a good idea to have a termination because her condition was so serious. And at the time, now bear in mind that this was 15, nearly 16 years ago, we were told that there was nobody alive in the world with a condition over the age of 20. And that the outlook was really pretty bleak. She'd have a miserable life. She'd spend most of it in and out of hospital. As it happened, she wasn't quite at the worst end of the scale when she was born. So instead of her having to have surgery within the first few days of life, we were able to wait a few months. And by the time she was 10 months old and had her first open heart surgery, she'd been in and out of hospital more times than I can count. She'd had bronchiolitis when she was 10 days old, which resulted in her heart stopping because she'd stopped breathing. She'd had various water infections. She'd had every chest infection going. But then she had heart surgery at 10 months old, and suddenly we had a different baby. She had her appetite back. She was energetic, and she's done fantastically well. She was anticipated to need another 2 surgeries before she was adult-sized. She's actually only had 1, which was last summer in August, and she's now getting ready to do a Duke of Edinburgh practice walk for 3 days next week, and then the full 3-day walk in June. She's not very happy about it, but she's physically well enough to do it, and she's really been building up, and to be able to actually do that less than a year after open heart surgery is amazing. So that's kind of the potted history. And every time people that I've worked with, people that I've encountered, have found out about my children's conditions, because clearly they would crop up when I was at work and I suddenly needed to drop everything to go to hospital. They would say, "How do you stay so happy?" And I always used to say, well, you just have to. I do what I have to. I have no choice. And then I took a step back and thought, actually, I do have a choice. And it's a very conscious choice that I remember actually making when Charlie was diagnosed at birth. I thought, okay, this isn't what I planned. This isn't what I'd anticipated when I was going to have a child, but this is what we've got. And we can either be a really miserable family, or we can be a happy family, or rather, a normal, and I put it in inverted commas, whatever normal is, family that has its normal ups and downs and everything else. That doesn't mean that it's been plain sailing every step of the way. I forget my own best advice sometimes, and I think it's important to remember, whatever we do in life, to be kind to ourselves sometimes, that we don't always take the advice, etc. But despite the lows that have come about from time to time, I always seem to manage to pick myself back up, and that's really the happiness element, that kind of resilience and bounce back ability. And because so many people asked me about it, I wanted to share it.
Mm. So, and you have to, we've had this conversation before. You're not a runner.
No. No, I'm just about getting to the stage of maybe getting into walking, but no, running. I tried actually many years ago when I was doing my teacher training course. There was a friend of mine on the course. She was a fell runner actually, and she'd got into running because she was overweight, and she decided that she didn't want to forego good food, so she decided to start running. And she actually had a lot of patience, and for a few months came out with me and did the sort of walk, jog, walk thing, and for a little while I kind of took to it, but it just wasn't my thing. Without her pushing me along, it just didn't work. So.
But there's some really interesting blogs out there, and this kind of landscape of I don't really know the expressions, but lots of kind of plus size bloggers who write about despite what the media think about big ladies, that there are overweight women out there that are happy. And I've read some really interesting blogs that are kind of like, how dare you be fat and fat and so it is a theme that I often explore, because through my blog, when I first started writing my blog, it was often about weight loss, and actually my own happiness was often tied up with how much I weighed, and I realized that was not healthy for me. And there was a huge turning point where I realized that actually my happiness isn't tied to my weight, and this is to do with how I think. And I made a decision to stop writing about my weight loss, because it was irrelevant. And actually what makes me happy isn't what size of jeans I wear, but how healthy I feel, and other things. So I guess that's why I was really interested to get you on the webinar to talk about some of these issues, particularly to do with with how, you know, making a conscious effort to be happy can improve your happiness, if that makes sense.
Yes, and there are some really simple things that that you can do to actually boost your happiness. And I think that the key is, like with everything, is not to become obsessed with it, because I think if you become obsessed with, I should be happy, I'm doing all these things to be happy, why aren't I happy, then you're going to make yourself miserable in the process of trying to be happy. But it depends on how you view happiness as well. I like the definitions of happiness given by people like Mathieu Ricard, who's a very famous French Buddhist monk. And it's not about this kind of feeling of elation and always being on top of the world, but it really is about that resilience and that inner sense of well-being and contentedness. And that's kind of touching on what you were saying about, you know, what is it that makes you happy? It's not the size you are, it's not the clothes you wear, it's what's in your head, it's what's inside you. So some of the things that you can do, just to touch on a few of them tonight. One of the really big things is help, and that works on two levels. One is learning to ask for help, and as women especially, I think we're not very good at it. Women are notoriously supposed to be brilliant at multitasking and doing everything at once, and if you've got children and a job and a husband or partner or whatever, you seem to try and juggle it all, and as women we're very good at guilt and constantly thinking that we're trying to do too many things and not doing any of them well, but we just don't ask for help. And that's something that chips away at your well-being, really, because gradually you start feeling resentment towards the people that you're not asking for help, but maybe they should be mind readers and help you anyway, and you start feeling resentment towards the people that you're trying to help, your family, etc. So asking for help is a really big thing to do, and it's starting with the little things. So, for example, and I am rubbish at it, I'll put my hand up, you know, it's something that I really constantly have to remind myself. I go shopping, usually I'm very lucky actually, it's my husband that does the family shopping, but if I go for something and I'm there trying to put stuff in the bags and everything, and there's always somebody that goes, oh, would you like some help with your bags? And no, fine. Absolutely fine. And I think, why do I say that? Why don't I just say, yes, thanks, that'd be lovely? Or when I speak and I'm carrying big bags around and boxes, you know, and people are going, will you just let me help you? So it's actually learning to ask for help. And if you start with little things like letting somebody help you with your shopping, just practicing saying yes, thank you, and leaving it at that, then that's a really good thing. Now, the flip side of that is actually helping others. And whilst we do have to be careful not to overstretch ourselves and take too much on, if you're helping others in a way that doesn't overly burden you, but particularly if you manage to give your time for something, then that gives you that real sense of purpose in life. And that sense of purpose is a key factor to being happier. So if you can give a little bit of time to charity every month or whatever, or take part in a project. Now, if you're thinking about running, you know, it might be that it's a really great incentive to build up your fitness to actually run either a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon or whatever your next milestone is in terms of your running challenges, and to tie that in with doing something for charity, and then you're doing something for yourself but also for charity, and that element of doing something for charity is a really great way to boost your happiness. So that's really asking for help, and there's lots of ways that you can do that. Do you want me to go on to the others, or is there anything specific about that?
Actually, I mean, a really good example of that is the Clubhouse, and quite often, you know, from the outside you would think that I'm the person giving the help, and that, you know, all the ladies that are part of the Clubhouse are there waiting for me to help them. But actually what we've found is that there is a lot of help being offered from amongst the ladies themselves. And actually, when I've asked the members of the Clubhouse what they find most valuable, it is that support and that help from each other. So, you know, you're right, you need to ask for the help. And so I would say to the ladies in the Clubhouse that are struggling on specific issues is to ask the rest of the group for their advice and their help and their support, because we are here collectively to give it and to offer it to each other. So I mean, it's a really practical way of kind of, you know, leading towards that more kind of happier sense of yourself.
And there will always be people who've had maybe similar experiences to yours, who've already gone through the same struggles you have. So as you say, in the Clubhouse, you know, it's a great opportunity to actually ask for that help. Somebody might have encountered similar problems and overcome them, and they can give you very practical tips. And of course, what you're doing by asking for help is giving them the opportunity to feel great by helping you. So it works both ways.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the other things that you talked about was happiness ingredients, which
yes,
I love that way of thinking about things.
Yes, I mean, I do think about things in food terms a lot. So it's all about recipes and ingredients. And I thought about, you know, what are the things that when you're thinking about cooking that lift the flavors of your food. So things would be really bland if you never used any salt, pepper, herbs or spices, that kind of thing. And I always think about one of the favorite things for me to cook is a nice chili con carne. And my husband laughs at me because my face literally lights up when I put the peppers in, because the colors just bring it to life. And to me, it's just one of those, wow, you've got all the scents, you've got everything going on, and then the peppers go in and it's complete. It brings it to life. And life is a bit like that. You know, there are little things that you can do, and they're very individual, and each of us will have different things. So clearly cooking is one of mine. It's one of my stress relief things. You know, if I get a bit stuck, I'm trying to be creative and I'm hitting a mental block, or I'm a little bit frustrated or anything like that, then cooking is a great way for me to actually overcome that. But there are lots of other things, you know, having a nice soak in a hot bath, or for you probably going for a run, I would anticipate, and quite a few of the ladies in the clubhouse. So, you know, or watching a bit of comedy, you know, all of those things. Sometimes even just finding a YouTube video of your favorite comedian and watching a clip that you know makes you laugh every time. That kind of thing, whatever it is. It just gives you that little bit of a boost, and it does give you that little moment of joy. But if you put enough of those into your life, and if you really make a conscious effort to do that, then I think it's almost like having a little bit of immunization against when things get tough, because it gives you that little bit of a buffer of happiness and well-being that allows you to maybe not crash quite so much when things happen.
And I think for running, I mean, what happens a lot in the clubhouse is that we all have these different levels. So some of us will be like, oh, I'm doing really well with my running, I'm really enjoying it, I'm really seeing progress. And then the other half of the group are like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me, I really can't find the energy to get out, I've just had a really bad run. And I think in terms of how I see it, in terms of these ingredients, is I know for me, when I'm feeling low in my running or I'm not seeing progress, is there certain things that I do to try and prop myself up. So it might be buying a new piece of kit, it might be downloading a new track to listen to while I run, it might be a new route, it might be running with friends, it might be signing up for a race. So I've got all of these kind of little tips and tricks to kind of chuck into the pot just to see if that's going to lift and boost my spirits a little bit.
So they're your running little happiness ingredients, aren't they? So it's almost like another level, isn't it? If running is a little happiness ingredient in itself, then all the things you're doing, if you're struggling a bit, they're again little happiness ingredients. And absolutely, and it really, really works. And actually, doing physical activity in general, of course, is a great little happiness ingredient to have in your life, because whatever that physical activity is, you know, and particularly running, because it is quite strenuous, it releases the endorphins, and you get that rush of feeling great afterwards. So it's a really nice one to have in your life. And as you say, if you've then got the little things that you know will just tip you back into doing it when you know that you're struggling a little bit, then that's absolutely fantastic.
Do you think that that women often feel guilty about pursuing happiness?
I think it just comes into the whole pot of women feel guilty about lots and lots of things. And probably, yes, pursuing happiness, it's down to, you know, we feel guilty about making time to do the stuff we enjoy doing, to put the little happiness ingredients into our lives. You know, we feel guilty if we take time away from our family just for ourselves. And maybe if we're away from our family, we should be using that time productively to work. You know, it's always that guilt. And I know, having having spoken to lots of women, that I'm not unique in that, that you always feel pulled in all directions. So yes, actually spending time to work on your emotional well-being, on your happiness, can sometimes make you feel a bit guilty, because it's spending time on yourself, and maybe there are other people you should be spending that time on. But the important thing to remember is, if you burn out, if you get to a point where you've given so much of yourself that there's nothing left, then you're no good to those people that you're actually trying to be there for, whether that's your family, whether that's your employer, etc. So actually it's really, really important to look after your well-being first.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the ladies in our webinar. If you've got any questions for Frederica, then please do post them in the chat area, and we'll keep a little eye on that. But I just wanted to raise another issue that I know ladies do talk to me about, which is that kind of area around depression, and I know personally a few years back, before I got into running, I had a very, very stressful job, and a number of things happened in my life, and I found myself with chronic fatigue syndrome, which led to depression. And it took me a while to kind of claw my way out of that. And when I did claw my way out of it, I don't know if it's coincidentally, but it was about the time that I really started to up my exercise. And so I really think that by having more exercise in my life, it's a way of me managing kind of the onset of depression, and kind of my moods are very much led by that. So I just wondered what you thought about kind of the links between kind of exercise and kind of managing kind of depression and that kind of chronic fatigue syndrome and burnout, which you spoke about.
Yeah, well, obviously I can only speak from my own experience. I'm not in any way qualified to speak about it, but I do know that it's something that is recognised, and I think even by the NHS now, that exercise especially can be used as a treatment for depression, but also as a prevention for depression. And obviously it's always better if you can prevent it rather than treat it. Like you, I've suffered bouts of depression myself as well, and I've gone down the route of going on antidepressants for a little while, and then gradually being able to come back off them, and isn't it wonderful if we can actually get to a point where we don't need to go down the route of medicating, because antidepressants, they work undoubtedly when you're really low. Sometimes you do need them to just get you that boost, but they have horrible side effects, and they're not always very pleasant to take, and they take a long time to come off. So if you can kind of work with exercise to keep those endorphins going. I know that although I'm not a massive exerciser, getting outside and walking, for example, for me has a huge beneficial effect on my mood and on my general sort of emotional well-being. And now that I'm starting to get more into doing that, I actually find that if I'm getting a little bit sometimes, when I'm working, just taking a 20-minute walk at lunchtime completely changes my mood and my state. Apart from anything else, when you're exercising, not only are you getting the benefits of the endorphins, but I think it gives you a space almost like a meditation, because you are completely engrossed in that activity. I think people think of meditation of just sitting there and focusing on your breathing and all of that, and that's of course traditionally meditation. I've never been able to do that very well. My mind wanders all over the place. Which is why one of the things that I do actually is laughter yoga, which is a great form of meditation as well. But exercise has that same effect. If you're really focused, if it's running, on keeping that pace going, on making sure your breathing's right and everything. Again, if I'm walking and I'm focused on walking at a certain pace and making sure that I'm walking in the right position because I know my back otherwise hurts and all of that kind of thing, then suddenly you're in a very different place mentally, and it is a form of meditation. So I think it's very, very useful from that point of view as well.
Yeah. Okay, tell us a little bit about yoga, laughter yoga.
Laughter yoga, it's fantastic. It was invented in 1995, I should remember that off the top of my head, by a medical doctor actually in India, and he had looked into the benefits of laughter, and laughter in itself is fantastic in terms of it's actually been shown to work as a pain reliever for people with chronic pain illnesses, and it's also, of course, a great mood lifter, and again it does release a lot of those endorphins. And the other great thing about laughing is that it enables you to properly open your lungs and breathe from the diaphragm, which again, if you're thinking about it from the point of view of somebody who exercises, it's a really good thing to learn to breathe properly. Now the thing is, when things go wrong in life and we have those low times and maybe we are heading down a route of depression, etc., it's really difficult to find something to laugh at. And even the things that maybe ordinarily you would find very funny, you might just watch them and go, yeah, whatever, it's not doing it. So the beauty of laughter yoga is that you can actually tap into the ability to laugh without any comedy, without any humor. You just laugh for no reason. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. So you can do it in groups and in classes, and there are various exercises that you do. And I know when I spoke at the event you were at, I got everybody up and shaking hands and laughing, and everybody felt a bit silly. But that's the whole thing. You feel silly, and because you feel silly, you laugh even more, don't you? But you can just do it. You know, you can just sit in your house and say, right, I'm going to have a 5-minute laughter meditation, and just start laughing, and you just kind of go. And that's it. And it is fake, but it really does work in terms of still working the muscles, still getting that breathing going. And if you do it for a sustained period of time, then you're really getting all the benefits of the endorphin releases as well. So if you can, do 5-10 minutes every day, and it's a fantastic activity to do.
Well, we tested it actually because just after hearing you at that event, I was running a training day in Hyde Park for ladies that were getting ready for a half marathon. And the ladies had never met each other before, and they were all a little bit nervous. So what we did as part of the introduction was it's a bit weird because women tell me all the time that one of their biggest fears is being laughed at when they go out running. So just to break the ice, what we did was we just laughed at each other.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was great. It really broke the ice, and it was just ridiculous. Anybody watching us must have just thought we were this crazy bunch of women, plus-size women in our running gear laughing at each other. But it really did break the ice, and it really made us feel great before we tackled the 10 miles that we were off to do, and it really set the scene for the day. So, I mean, I'm not a yoga laughter practitioner, but I really kind of got what you was talking about. Sometimes when you force yourself to laugh at things, and obviously that's why we laugh sometimes at really awful things, because it's a way of coping. And you know, the whole premise of my blog, you know, I came last in a race, and that's why I started writing my blog, you know, because it was really funny. It was funny that I came last, and it was really funny that they'd packed away the finish line. It's funny, and if I didn't laugh about it, I would cry. And actually, I think that's what people really relate to, is that kind of humor, you know, that is kind of universal. So yeah, I really hope that that the women who have taken part in today, is it funny, Joanne actually was on the session with us, and she said she just could not stop laughing on that day. Which was brilliant. I mean, I got them to do some really wacky things that day. I got them to stand on an imaginary box at Speaker's Corner and shout out that they were going to be running a marathon and stuff, crazy stuff.
Oh, brilliant.
So it really set the scene. Was there anything else that we spoke about earlier that you wanted to kind of remind the ladies of?
Yeah, I think the biggest ingredient when it comes to happiness is gratitude. Yeah. And it's really about looking at, and I think it's really important when you think about the ladies in the clubhouse and thinking about the frustration sometimes when you're taking up running or any kind of new activity, that I think in life quite often we think about where we want to get to, and we don't think about where we are now, but we think about where we would like to be starting from. Wouldn't it be nice if I was already at this point? And that can be very self-destructive to do, but actually if you practice gratitude in a very conscious way, then it brings you very much back to where you are right now. And it may be that you've never run or you haven't run for 20 years and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I wish I'd never stopped running. I wish I'd never put the weight on and it would be so much easier. You know, I've done that so many times with weight loss, you know, thinking, oh, if only I hadn't put all the weight back on plus more, then, you know, I could now be so much slimmer, but I'm not. So what's the point? You know, actually what you can think of is, and this has been for me from a weight loss, which I look at very much from a healthy point of view, you know, a turning point, which is, although it's taken me quite a few years to drop a significant amount of weight, and in that time I've gone up and down, what I'm looking at now from a gratitude point of view is actually I never got back up to that weight I started from in 2009, and that is a huge mind shift for me. And even though I've gone up and down, I've kind of always had an upper boundary where as soon as I got there, I thought, right, that's it, I've got to. So it's looking at the little things that you are already achieving and being grateful for those, looking at the things that are good in your life already and being grateful for those. It's like the stuff that I've talked about with my kids, you know, of course it's not fair, you know, it's not fair and it's horrible, and when we're in the middle of going through stuff, it's miserable, and I'm human. I get the kind of why does this keep happening to us, you know, it's not fair. But if you keep staying in that loop, it becomes really, really destructive. And actually, I prefer to look at, you know, we've got two amazing girls and we've got two amazing daughters, and how lucky are we? Because so many people want children and can't have them. And you know, we have been lucky because despite their conditions, whatever happens tomorrow, next year, in the next 10 years, I don't know. But whatever has happened so far, and as many traumas as we've gone through, we've had some amazing times with our daughters, and actually having gone through all that makes the teenage nightmares much easier to bear. You know, I can now sometimes sit back and look at, especially our youngest, Hannah. I hope she can't hear me, but she has the most horrific teenage tantrums, and I just think, isn't it lovely that I'm in a position to get frustrated about this? Yeah. And it completely then alters the way you look at things, doesn't it? It doesn't mean she gets away with it. It does mean that I don't quite get in the same frustrated state that I otherwise would. And one really nice way to practice gratitude is to just keep a gratitude journal and write down a minimum of 3 things that you're grateful for every day. And what's apparently even better is if you can actually take the time to write down not just what you're grateful for, but why particularly that's important to you. That really connects you to that gratitude. And it doesn't take very long at all. It maybe takes a couple of minutes every day. And it's a great way. If you do it in the morning, it sets you up for the day. It starts you thinking positively about the day ahead. If you do it before you go to bed, it just gets you to go to bed with a nice happy smile on your face about the wonderful things that have happened.
And we've been doing that this month actually, not very consistently, but you know, a few of us have been saying what I'm thankful for today, or this is what I'm feeling happy about. And actually it is those things. And I think because the clubhouse is completely inclusive, so we have ladies that are contemplating running and we have ladies that are running marathons and everything in between. Sometimes it must be really difficult if you're just starting out to see ladies that are running 20 miles and think, gosh, you know,
I'm never going to get there.
But we all have, you know, we all started from somewhere, and you know, sometimes we just, you know, I go out sometimes, and actually I went out recently for my longest training run, which was 20 miles, and I had a horrific 20 miles. I just found it really hard. Somewhere in the middle, I just lost my confidence, and I could have just cried. I could have just, you know, I could have just sat there and cried. And I got home and I put it on our little Facebook group, and I said, you know, it was horrific. I found it really difficult. And the ladies just picked me up and they were like, it doesn't matter that it was difficult. You did those 20 miles. And it really just made me realize that sometimes we beat ourselves up and we just want so much that we don't appreciate what we've managed to do. And if it's a mile, if it's 10 minutes out the door, whatever it is, we just need to be grateful that we've been able to do that.
That's it. And just taking that moment to just reflect back actually on what you've already achieved, because sometimes, as you say, it's easy to forget just how much you have actually achieved. And that's whether it is through running, whether it's in your job, whether it's with your family or whatever, you know. It comes back to that guilt thing as well. If you just take a step and just think, right, okay, let's actually look at what's good here and what I've already done that's good, you'd surprise yourself usually at how much you have actually achieved and what a long way you've already come. And even if that long way is literally just taking that first step out of the door, as you say, you know, that can be a huge step, especially if you are a larger lady and you're worried about embarrassment and you're worried about not being able to run, etc. That first step is huge.
Yeah.
So actually being able to do that, I had a similar experience because Hannah, my youngest, has been training to do the Duke of Edinburgh walk. We've been going on these walks together as a family. Now I've now got to a point where she's got quite good, so I've said to my husband, right, you take her, I'll go and do other little walks because I'm holding her back and she needs to train, so that's no good for her. But up to a point I was going with them, and we went about a month ago on quite a hilly walk, and it was horrific. It took us about 4.5 hours to do probably about 4 miles or so. There were bits that were literally like this that never seemed to end, and I got to points where I thought I'm going to die on this, on this blinking hill, you know. But then I thought, well, what's the alternative? I can't stop. We're in the middle of the moors, you know. I have to somehow find the strength to keep going. And of course, while we were doing this, now Hannah's now turned a corner, and she's now actually quite positive about it. But at this point, we were also having to stop every 5 minutes because she just literally refused to keep going. And she'd go, why am I having to do this? It's not fair. No, I don't want to do Duke of Edinburgh and all of this. And having to explain to her for the umpteenth time. And I was thinking, I'm expending energy telling you why you need to be doing this. You know, and it was cold and it was windy. And I got to points where I was just kind of, I'd got my walking sticks, I was scrambling up and I was just leaning against these sticks thinking, I can't breathe. This is just not going to end well. And then I got to the end and I literally burst into tears, the relief of having actually done it. But then I looked back and I thought, you know, if you'd shown me this hill and said you're going to walk this for 4.5 hours, I'd have said absolutely not. But once I was in it, and I did it, and then I stepped back and I looked and I thought, I've achieved an awful lot. I think I need to do some easier walks before I tackle that one again, but I've managed it and I actually got to the other end of it. So it just shows, doesn't it? It's that taking that step back and looking at what you've achieved.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up there, but just taking a piece of your advice, I'm just going to take just a moment or two to show my gratitude, both to you for joining us this evening, and for inspiring me a few weeks ago to really think about happiness and for myself, but also specifically to the ladies of the Clubhouse who've really supported me over the last few months. I launched the Clubhouse not knowing whether there'd be any interest in it, and the ladies have not only paid me their money every month and inspired me to create a program for them, they've also given me a lot of personal advice and support while I've been on this journey, not only with my running, but with the business. And as many of you will know, tomorrow I am going on ITV's This Morning, which is very exciting and is going to, I'm sure, kind of change perhaps the dynamic of what I'm doing with my campaign. And I just really wanted to, you know, to say thank you, and that I really do appreciate the support that you've given me and the confidence that you've given me to drive forward with that. So Frederica, thank you for joining us. It's been fantastic, and I'm sure both the ladies that have been in the webinar this evening and those that watch it on playback will take a lot of value from it.
You're very welcome, and again, you know, in the spirit of gratitude, thank you so much for inviting me along. It's been an absolute pleasure and great fun.
And yes, so ladies, we'll see you again for another webinar next month. Keep an eye out in the Facebook group where I'll be telling you what next month's theme is. Thanks for joining us this evening, and see you all soon. Take care. Bye.